Hello, hello. It's Tuesday and I'm here for tea time. It's hard for me to believe a whole week has gone by. I have done not much else other than sleep since I got home. But when I'm not sleeping, I'm out here with the horses. And we have big news here at Plum Pond. We have moved the youngsters back down into the herd. So we have a herd of 6 now. So we've got Raz in the front, who's one of the older horses, and Ari, who's the stallion. And then behind him is Z, who's our new young one. So Z is part of the herd now. And because we brought Z down, we could bring Ocasio down as well. So all 6 are together. I feel like I have a proper horse herd now. So today I have something to talk about that I realized has become very clear in my mind in the last month or two, but I haven't been doing tea time, so I haven't talked about it with anyone. And this is the concept of pressure versus action. So just like anything, we have to define our terms. Everyone's going to think of pressure differently or action differently. So I've got to define how I use those terms. Pressure is an increasing discomfort until somebody changes their actions. So we usually put pressure on a horse in training when we want them to behave differently. Whether it's pressure on the lead rope to get them to start walking or to turn or to stop, or pressure by waving your hands so they don't run over you. Pressure is an added discomfort to get them to change their behavior. And certainly this came up a lot in recent media with all of the talk about the Olympics and dressage and everything else, and how much pressure is reasonable in training. So that's a huge, huge subject. But where I'm more interested in talking is, where's the line between pressure and action? Because I feel like we could replace pressure with action if there was enough time. And that's what I teach, is if time were not the issue, if we could do whatever it was that we chose and take as long as we wanted to train horses, pressure becomes optional. Now, I'm not saying I don't use pressure. I do use pressure. But I prefer to use action. So how do I define action? Action would be the opposite of passivity. So passivity would be where you are not distracting the horse and you are being the same as the horse in some way. This is a lovely, lovely feeling when you can be the same as your horse, whether you're galloping down a beach together or whether you're standing in a paddock together. Or right now, I'm sitting here and I'm merely the same as the horse because we all want to be in a similar area. So I'm being passive and I'm being like them in some sense. Now, the opposite of being passive is to be active. And to be active is to be distracting in some way, to distract them into changing their focus or changing their mind. And you can distract them. But the question is, where does that turn into pressure? Because at a certain point, what if they don't want to be distracted? What if they want to ignore you? What if they just want to eat grass? That is going to be where you cross the line from action to pressure. If you really need them to change their behavior, and are you willing to make them a little bit uncomfortable until they do change their behavior? Now, there's certainly times and places where I will use pressure, but I would prefer to use action. And the thing that makes action different is the willingness to adjust it. So if I pet my horse's shoulder and there's no change in behavior, I might try petting their back. And if there's no change in behavior, I might try walking around them. And if there's no change in behavior, I might try talking to them. And action has a level of adaptability to it. So if we're willing to keep adapting our action, then it is no longer pressure. It becomes pressure when we insist on doing something difficult for the horse until they change their behavior. So with pressure, the motivation for behavior change is to avoid something they dislike. With action, so we're going to just look back here. Ari and Z are talking a little bit. Looks like it's not too dramatic. Yay, Kristen, you did make it. And yes, Louise, I do love this subject too. So action is going to be the willing to adjust things in a way where the horse doesn't feel the need to get away from you. And we pretty much know something is pressure if we start needing a fence to hold them close to us, if we need a pocket full of food to keep them with us, if we need a rope to hold them close to us. So if we have to stop the horse from leaving, we have then gone into the realm of pressure, because action would be adaptable and would keep changing, adapting to types of action that the horses didn't want to get away from. So this is why I train without tools, is I want the horse to tell me for them, for their unique individual horse, personality, horsenality, whatever you want to call it, for the unique horse, what do they feel is pressure and what do they feel is action? I would rather use action to train. And that might mean that I rock them a little bit, I stroke them a little bit, I walk around them a little bit. And then when I get the thought change that I want to train, that's when I become passive. And I'm going to be passive so that they really get a chance to soak in the memory of whatever it was that I just emphasized. So I'll take action until they start to behave in ways that I would like to see more of. And then I'll be passive so that they can really remember what it was that they did that made me switch from action to passive. Now, in order for this to work, you have to train the horse to like passive to begin with. So if you've always been passive for too long, they start to hate it. And then passive becomes a pressure. And if they want to get away from it or push into it, they see it as a pressure, not as an action. Action is the willingness to change and change and change again until there's a response from your horse that they also make a change that you like. So I would like to train with actions and let the horse respond in ways that they feel good about and I feel good about, and then be passive to mark those moments. The beginning of my training is a lot of training horses just to like passivity. Teach them that I'm not going to be passive for so long that it irritates them. If I can teach them that I'm not going to irritate them with passivity, then they start to want it. And once they start to want it, then we can use it as a way to help them form really strong memories of whatever it is they learned with me. Hopefully, I'm going to use actions to shape their behavior. Help them look left or look right or slow down or speed up or think about different things, learn new movements, learn new ways of being in harmony with me. And then when they start to be on the right track, behaviors that I want to see again, I'm going to go to passivity. And passivity helps them remember it. When I stop distracting them, they have a chance to really soak in whatever the memory was of what they just did. If my horse doesn't like passivity, they're also going to have a memory problem. So horses that don't like passivity are really going to struggle remembering what they did and how to repeat it unless there's a strong enough fear or pain factor. So fear or pain can train, of course, because they have to survive. Survival is really important. And so if you train with any sort of pain or fear, they're going to remember that really well. My unpopular opinion is that if you train with food, there tends to be fear that they're not going to get enough. And so they tend to remember really, really, really well when there's food involved, because they're afraid they're not going to get enough of that high value food. And that helps them remember things really well, and they don't have to like passivity to remember things really well. But that is a pressure-based training system, because as soon as you leave, all those cookies or apples or carrots leave with you, and they're only available for as long as you're there. And that's not wrong, it's not bad, it's just a different way of training. But they need some downtime to really form a memory. So Christian, curiosity, I think, is where the beginning of a memory starts. So curiosity gives them an experience that uses their sensory system. You can see them use their eyes, their ears, or their nose, or their sensory system involved when they're in curiosity. But if they pile one moment of curiosity on top of the next curiosity, on top of the next curiosity, they can't remember all the things that happened. It's just too much. So at some point there has to be a marker where the curiosity gets turned down into a little bit of downtime, where they just settle a little bit. And when they settle, that's when a memory becomes really deep. So if we have horses that have a really high curiosity, it's great, but they're going to have trouble remembering everything they were curious about, unless you put a higher motivator in there, like food. Food's a great higher motivator, because there's a little bit of a lack of having enough of it. And that's going to make memory a lot stronger. That's been my observation. So the way I train is without food, without ropes, without any fences, so that horses can tell me when they feel pressure. Because when they feel pressure, they will want to leave or push against me. And that's how I know I'm crossing the line from action to pressure. Now, I can use a little bit of pressure. I found it's about 20%. I can use about 20% pressure. And if I get over that limit, they don't want to stay anymore. And they'll let me know. Horses are pretty good at this. Eula has a comment. I'm so curious. Eula says, what about cookies that are just handed out in the same situation every time? Put the halter on, mounting the horse, but they're not given after the horse completes a new or difficult task. Yeah, so I would think that is really going to depend on the horse, Eula. The question is, some horses are really good at isolating moments like that, and some are not. So the ones that are really good at isolating moments will say, they'll realize that the pressure is only in the situation where the cookies show up. So halter on or mounting the horse, and that everything else can be action. There's other horses that just have a really hard time ever letting go of the idea that there might be another cookie. And that's going to be on a horse by horse situation. So I don't work with cookies enough to be able to answer that question with any sort of authority. But if you figure it out, Eula, and you have a really concrete answer, that's great. I'm here to sort of offer my perspective on things. But what I love about the horse world is there's a lot of us working towards doing as well as we can by horses. And we're all exploring that front from slightly different angles. So I don't think pressure is bad. I think pressure is fine. We want to look at the quality of the horse's life. Do they remember the right things? Do they have the right habits to have a really good life? Do they have good relationships? Are they happy? Are they healthy? If we're getting to those ends, then we are doing things right, whether you use pressure or action to get there. If you don't use pressure, it's going to take a lot longer. But pressure is replaceable by action if you have time. And that's really exciting to me. Christian says, how about curiosity turning this into a focus change by redirecting the focus of a horse? So that you can then set in breaks between curiosity. Yeah, Kristen, the idea is that we set in breaks between curiosity, and that the focus change is new curiosity. So every time there's a new focus change, there is a new sensory input through the eyes or the nose or the ears or the feeling senses of a horse. And those new focus changes and those new curiosity keep building a new sensory experience that's fun for the horse to remember. But in order to really set that memory in deep, there has to be those breaks, those pauses, where they go a little bit blank and their mind rests for a moment or two. Doesn't have to be a long time, but they do have to have some little mental breaks in between the curiosity to really get a deep level of learning, in my opinion. Either that, or you're going to need some pressure. So for people who are in a hurry, a little bit more pressure is going to be really good in the training. For people like me who want to smell all the roses along the training path, I can replace pressure with action. I can use a very adaptable form of continuing to change my actions so the horse feels like I understand them, and I'll stay underneath the threshold where they want to step away or push into me. So that's what my perspective is. And I think it's something we don't talk about enough. People sort of feel like pressure is needed or not needed. And I would say it really depends on the horse and the situation and the amount of time you have. Mary says, adaptable action resonates with me and a good reminder to be creative. I will be updating my mantra. Excellent, Mary. Yeah, the adaptability of your action is really what it makes it action, not pressure. And when you really, really just need the right response from your horse, we may have to stray into pressure more, both to give them the motivation to remember it and the motivation to change their behavior in the way that we hope. So Kristen says, I think rituals are easier to understand for horses than building up new behaviors. That's true for all of us, Kristen, I think. We are habitual creatures. We tend to do the same habits over and over again. And a lot of them are mindless. And it's true for humans. It's true for horses. Rituals are much easier to understand. Building up new behaviors is the cutting edge of interesting, but it's where a lot of the vitality of life comes from, I think. So we need a balance between our rituals and building up new behaviors. Rachel says, such a cool concept to think about, that pressure can be replaced by action. Thank you for sharing your realizations with us, Elsa. Yeah, Rachel, I've been using this for a while, but I have a new clarity in how it fits together. And so when I find myself using more pressure than I want, I have to get more creative in which actions would get the same results with a little bit more time. How would I use actions to break down the steps of progress and mark them with passivity to get to the same end result, just taking a little longer? So, yes, those are my thoughts today. Thank you guys for joining me for tea time, and my boys. So we've got Ari the stallion closest to the ranger there, and Z right behind me. We've got all the horses together. I'm so excited to have a herd of 6 now. It's not quite the herd of 20 that I grew up with, but we're getting closer. And you're welcome, Christian. I'm so glad you're enjoying the tea times. And I will look forward to seeing you all next week. And have a wonderful time. Enjoy this idea of alternating whether you want to use action or whether you want to use pressure for training. Both are valid. You get to choose. Thank you.